Welcome to Cosmic Chosen. Chosen One, you need to hear this. When control fails, desperation digs tunnels. They couldn't chain your mind, so now they're trying to crawl beneath your foundation, spiritually, psychologically, energetically. Let that sink in. They're not trying to trap you anymore, they're trying to escape you. You see, a chosen one who disappears from their forecast, who doesn't react the way they rehearsed, becomes a full-blown anomaly. And anomalies break systems. You didn't just survive the programming, you rewrote the code. This tunnel they're digging under your house, it's not physical. It's spiritual warfare cloaked as concern. It's emotional manipulation disguised as reconnection. It's attempts to reattach old soul ties, reopen healed wounds, and resurrect the version of you they could feed off. But it's too late. They studied your pain, not your purpose. They memorized your reactions, not your rebirth. They planned escape routes for the old you. But you evaporated from their system like encrypted vapor. You're off-grid now, chosen one, not because you're hiding, but because you've risen beyond reach. Let them tunnel. Let them dig. All they'll find is the echo of who you used to be, while the new you is ascending, expanding, and broadcasting on a frequency their devices can't decode. You're not the one stuck in a house. They are. And now they're trying to dig their way out of the very prison they built for you. That's the twist. So stay rooted. Stay hidden in plain sight. Because while they're under you, scrambling, you're above them, evolving. And evolution isn't visible to eyes trained only to detect destruction. Let's go deeper. First of all, you have changed into a mystery. Yet they based their surveillance on the old you. They based their monitoring on the previous iteration of you, the one who was still in pain, still doubting your value, and still taking offense at every slight personally. When you were in survival mode, they committed your emotional GPS to memory. You were simple to read back then. Your habits, your concerns, your insecurities, and your emotions were all laid out like a standard traffic report. They believed they could always dominate you because they studied your suffering rather than your strength. However, they made the fatal error of assuming you would remain there. What would happen if you stopped surviving and began changing was not something they anticipated. You underwent a spiritual mutation in addition to growth. You outgrew every category they attempted to put you in, making you unpredictable. Your whole energy field changed as a result of your spiritual development, not simply your behavior. They no longer have the emotional coordinates they used to follow you. By utilizing out-of-date information to find someone who isn't even on that level anymore, they are now attempting to monitor someone who no longer functions in the same dimension. It's making them insane because of this. You stopped being readable. You left them with a dusty script, looking lost and bewildered as they wondered how you vanished without a trace. You stopped performing the part they created for you and left the stage completely. You didn't just recover, you simply disappeared. Since their instruments were made to take advantage of your trauma rather than acknowledge your completeness, they are unable to follow you once you have recovered. They are now unable to unravel a soul that no longer aligns with their plot. You began walking on water as they attempted to pursue you. You began to move in heavenly beat and cease to respond and explain. They find you frightening because they see you as a ghost, a powerful, purposeful ghost. Second, your frequency was not included in their methodology. They were tuned into your frequency, not only observing your life. They were tied onto the way you used to think, feel, and carry emotional suffering because it sent out a specific signal. There is a spiritual frequency to trauma. Energy vampires, narcissists, and manipulators could readily pick up on the frequency you were sending when you were nervous, overanalyzing, trying to get approval, or fighting unspoken anxieties. They could sense your emotional condition from a great distance, like smoke from a fire. So they didn't need to follow you. They were able to determine when to contact you, when to spread rumors about you, when to turn up out of the blue, or when they suddenly sensed that something was going on in your life. Because of your trauma, they were able to read you. They could follow every change in your emotions, as if they were coming from an unseen speaker. However, That speaker has now died, not because you vanished, but rather because you recovered. By stopping your reaction and starting to forgive, detach, guard your energy, and ground yourself in your value, you started performing the internal work. Suddenly, the signal was different. They abruptly lost contact with you when you ceased advertising your injuries. All they're receiving is static, yet they're still reaching for you. The fact that they didn't anticipate mending to be a defense mechanism is what's driving them crazy. They believed that bond would last forever after they had you. However, you did something they never expected you to do. You increased your frequency to the point where low-level games can no longer even reach you. Since they don't live on that frequency, they are unable to tune into the tranquility, purpose, and clarity that you radiate. You gain spiritual invulnerability. They are now privately enthralled, perplexed, and irritated. Because that's where they felt strong. They're snooping about, trying to test the waters, and attempting to lure you back into your old wounds. However, you're no longer there, and to them, that quiet is more powerful than any argument because it indicates that they no longer have access to your energy, which is what they most want, not your attention. Thirdly, they are now lost and have no role since you broke the script. The individuals who attempted to keep an eye on you were not just observing you. They were fabricating a narrative about you. They wrote you the part of the failure, the helpless one, the emotional mess, the black sheep, and the one who would never get back up. They circulated the script and practiced it. Some seemed to be unaware of what was happening while covertly fostering the drama by playing the role of the savior, victim, or silent spectator. And you were meant to remain just where they had put you, predictable, shattered, and trapped in the same patterns. They felt in control because your injury gave them purpose and protected their identity. However, you violated the script. You stopped responding, you began to heal, and you began to doubt everything you had previously accepted. After leaving the stage they constructed, you began writing your own lines. Their little output abruptly collapsed. They are now unsure about how to behave around you. They appear so uneasy because the version of you standing in front of them doesn't match the tale they rehearsed. There was no expectation that you would gain self-assurance, achieve serenity, or triumph. You were expected to continue doing your role. Their whole performance fell apart without your cooperation. They are at a loss for words. Because your development makes their mask feel tighter. Some people completely shun you. You just don't fit anymore. You outgrew the whole production. People are still trying to entice you and get you to return to the role. It's what's making them crazy. They were following you because you provided order to their life, not merely to watch. Their poisonous roles were kept together by your grief. They're lost now that you've left. In the absence of a superior, they are unsure of their identity and lack the ability to move without judgment. You served as their scapegoat, their anchor, and their covert rival. Not physically, but emotionally, energetically, and spiritually. You are no longer with us. They have nothing left but themselves without you. That is the most terrible thing in the world for those who have made manipulating others their identity. Fourth, the psychic agreements they established behind your back were broken by your development. People may attempt to make money out of your failure without your consent. While you were simply trying to breathe, heal, and live, some people accomplished it spiritually, some emotionally, and others pretty literally. Silent deals were being made about who you would never be. They expected you to remain under them indefinitely, so they sealed your name into invisible contracts. These were energy agreements, soul-level efforts to control your fate, not just gossip sessions. They connected by making fun of your suffering and speaking death over your dreams, in the hopes that no one would ever take you seriously. Some even attempted to absorb your identity, your words, and your energy and pass it off as their own. The most outrageous aspect? They felt that because you would never change, it was safe to do this. They believed that you would always struggle, question your value, and doubt yourself. The broken version of you was the one with whom they signed their contracts. They bet on that person. They never thought you would change, grow, and become powerful. But as soon as you did, something broke. You violated the agreement. every deal that was established without your conscious permission was destroyed as you began to regain your authority. You began refusing requests from folks you used to go out of your way for. You stopped acting little to make other people feel comfortable. You stopped leaking energy. And you stopped explaining yourself. You were rendered unavailable as a result of that healing, not merely whole. They're frustrated now. The energy that they used to siphon off has stopped flowing. The spiritual agreements they formed behind your back that connected their success to your failure are null and invalid. They no longer have access, and they don't know why nothing is functioning for them. The karma is returning. Because the version of you that gave them a sense of authority is no longer there. Their customs, their shadow, and their gossip networks are all disintegrating. Your mere existence now seems like divine retaliation, not because you're doing maliciously, but rather because your development has shown that their motives were never good. You didn't only change. You revealed the covert agreements individuals made in the hopes that you wouldn't get this far. The people who previously scoffed at your potential now find your name to be bitter. The fifth is that you stopped using your ego, which made you undetectable. You were more accessible while you were still acting on your ego. Your ego lives out loud. It responds, defends, explains, and performs, not because you were weak. Ego was involved in every attempt to establish your value, every time you sought closure from those who had no right to know you, and every time you gave your side to those who were determined to misunderstand you. They did a good job of using that hook to draw you back in. They used shame, remorse, and falsehoods masquerading as care to lure you in, and you fell for it, believing that if you explained things enough, someone would eventually understand. However, your soul was wiser. Spirit doesn't need praise. It doesn't seek approval. It doesn't flaunt its every action. You were invisible in a spiritual sense rather than a physical one as you transitioned from ego to spirit. You stopped responding to triggers, responding to charges, and protecting your development from those who were out to bring you down. Their psychic GPS stopped working at that point. Since ego is a familiar language and functions in noise, conflict, pride, and survival, they could follow you through it. However, those who only comprehend control find it frightening that spirit moves in silence, discernment, and divine timing. Silence is not your detachment. Rather, it is insulation and spiritual stealth mode. You've transcended the need to be seen by people who merely observed you to identify your flaws, so you're no longer reacting to everything. They reject both the idea of a spirit and the idea of divine elevation. They are therefore unable to comprehend how you managed to escape their hold. They didn't think you were meant to become unreadable. They thought you were only meant to change slightly. They believed that your evolution would be superficial rather than profound. But you ascended, not just grew. You disrupted frequencies as well as habits. Since they never believed in God's movement, they will never be able to follow how He is moving through you. Now, they are looking for someone who is no longer broadcasting on ego. The fact that they never truly knew you in the first place, rather than just losing sight of you, is what frightens them. The sixth point is that your silence is actually matrix camouflage. Your quiet is precision, not passivity. You went silent because you understood the game and made the decision to stop playing, not because you were broken, perplexed, or uncertain. You ceased to feed the machine your responses, your justifications, and your emotional toil. You immediately disappeared from their pre-programmed reality once you disconnected from those recurring cycles. The drama, the arguments, the need to be noticed, the desire to be understood. The version of you they knew was always online, always posting, always providing explanations, always available, just enough for them to keep an eye on, evaluate, or drain energy from. You found yourself in a vicious cycle of performing for systems that were more concerned with your compliance than your clarity. You're off script now, though. The timeline they had you attached to vanished. You stopped responding predictably to predictable situations, which made you untrackable rather than just quiet. You began taking actions without announcing them. You extracted your soul from shallow areas. Where you were only tolerated, you stopped going. You stopped having conversations that were merely meant to entice you to return to your former self. You simply realized that people still using matrix code were wasting your voice, not that you had lost it. Now that you are out of the chaos's frequency range, they are unable to locate you, not because you have vanished. You're no longer vibrating at the level where attention-seeking, competition, guilt, and trauma bonding exist. That's how you became invisible, not physically, but energetically. You're not hiding. You're moving differently. You're intentional with your energy. Now, you're selective with your presence. You learned that being seen isn't the same as being safe, and you chose safety, peace, and alignment over applause, drama, and performance. So, no, they can't track you because they're still looking for someone who needed to be seen. But you outgrew the illusion. You walked off the stage, and now to them, you're not just silent, you're undetectable. Number 7. Their probes only work on the wounded, not the whole. They only knew how to reach you through the open doors your pain left behind. That's why they had access. Not because they were powerful, but because you were still bleeding. When you were wounded, you were easier to decode, easier to bait, easier to manipulate. Your triggers gave them a roadmap. Your need to explain, to defend, to be seen and heard, it made you reachable. That's what they preyed on. It wasn't love, it was leverage. But healing ruins the game. Now you've sealed the entry points. You're not reacting the same, you're not emotionally flammable anymore. They send the same messages, but they don't hit the same. They gossip, provoke, mimic your light, copy your words, or try to spy through mutuals and fake accounts. But it's not working because the version of you they knew, the one who needed their approval or feared their rejection, is gone. They don't know how to interact with your peace. Your wholeness is foreign to them. It confuses them. Your calm registers as arrogance to them. Your boundaries feel like betrayal. That's why they're poking, stalking, whispering, sending people to trigger you, trying anything to find out if the old wound is still there. But your healed energy is like a locked vault. They don't have the code. They aren't interested in reconciliation or truth. What they want is access. What they want is the emotional version of you they used to manipulate. But you've matured. You don't answer emotional summons anymore. You don't engage in tug-of-war matches that only exhaust your soul. You've moved beyond of their psychological grasp. That's what's pushing them to desperation. They believe they knew you, but they only ever knew your misery. Now that you're whole, they're lost. And the more they discover they can't identify the wound, the more desperate they grow. For without access to your brokenness, they have no power. So they keep sending probes, looking for a crack. But you're not there anymore. You're healed, grounded, and no longer circling around dysfunction. And it makes you untraceable to people who formerly thrived off your turbulence. Number 8. Your progress has become you their mirror, and they can't tolerate the reflection. Your progress didn't only raise you, it exposed them. Every inch you moved forward emphasized where they attempted to hold you back. Every limit you established showed the transgressions they claimed didn't happen. Every glow-up, spiritual or physical, became a live reminder of what they wanted to shatter. That's why they can't look at you now. It's not simply distance, it's shame. And shame doesn't look people in the eye. They would now have to face their own actions if they wanted to monitor you. They would have to acknowledge that the isolation they contributed to was deliberate, the gaslighting wasn't love, and the jokes weren't harmless. However, it would require admitting that you were never the issue. That would entail acknowledging that your healing dispelled the illusion and that their strength rested on your pain. They shun you because your evolution burns, not because they don't care. You turned into the mirror, not a controllable mirror, but a heavenly one, a truthful reflection that reveals to them what they attempted to conceal. To them, every time you publish, talk, walk with confidence, or live in peace, it's a conflict rather than simply you doing what you want to do. Your completeness is a silent judgment. It is a quiet criticism of your achievement. Your happiness is proof that the framework they established around your failure has broken down. This explains why some people remain mute, why others act as if they didn't know you, and why others stalk you from phony sites, yet are unable to publicly applaud you. It's not because you don't matter. Rather, it's because your brightness makes the lies they lied about you seem insignificant. The weight of the fact that you are live evidence that they were unable to restrain you is too much to bear. Not only did you get away, but you changed. To everyone who is still attempting to remain in denial, that metamorphosis rendered you radioactive. As a result, people now recoil from your energy, cringe at your name, and avoid you because when you enter a room, they see a mirror rather than a person, and they aren't prepared to face the reality. The ninth is that you quit playing for survival. Thus, they can no longer foresee you. Previously, it was simple to interpret your behavior since it sprang from a common source: fear, survival, and the urge to defend oneself. Your actions are predictable when you're responding to it. People could almost set their clocks by your response if they wanted to influence or control you. They were aware of when you would break, dispute, and withdraw. That predictability served as their playbook and roadmap. Because you were trapped in a survival game, they knew they were able to follow your patterns like a well-known tune. However, healing transforms everything. You shattered their algorithms once you began acting with intention, when intuition took the place of reason and trust took the place of fear. When you cease using your survival instincts, the people attempting to manipulate you can no longer understand your actions. You're reacting from a deeper place than what people can assess or forecast, from divine timing and from God's guidance. People who move based on conditioned reflexes and prior hurts are something they are used to. You've changed. You're wild, unrestrained, impulsive, and in tune with something bigger than the cacophony of their control. You're starting actions they didn't anticipate. You're no longer responding to their provocations. You are the player altering the rules. You are no longer a part of their game board. They can't follow you since you don't react with fear or reason. When someone is moving away from divine purpose, their typical monitoring techniques, emotional manipulation, psychological games, and social engineering don't work. You don't arrive where you're supposed to. You don't follow their rules. You are a force without a radar signature, an unpredictable storm. They find such unpredictability frustrating because it indicates that they have lost control. They have no idea how you'll react or where you'll attack next. You turned into a living wild card in the spiritual world, which is where genuine power resides, as well as in the material world. Because you play for destiny rather than survival, they are no longer able to follow you. 10th, when you started being who you really were, they lost the signal. They weren't following the true you, but the version of you that was conditioned by suffering, fashioned by survival, and hidden behind masks meant to blend in, stay out of trouble, or win over other people. That version could be seen because it was loud enough, prominent enough, and predictable enough. It sent out messages that were based on insecurity, fear, and a strong need to fit in. They mapped and altered that version of you, the one they believed they knew. But no map can capture authenticity. You destroyed the frequency they were tuned into when you eventually removed those masks, when you stopped acting, when you stopped hiding behind versions that weren't yours, and when you stopped pretending. They can't follow the real you since it doesn't follow their scripts or respond to their triggers in the manner they anticipate. Your genuineness is a signal unto itself. It is too intricate, unrestrained, and unpolished for their trackers. Because you returned to your original frequency, the one you were born on before trauma rewired your energy. You didn't merely develop, you vanished from their view. Those who are still in the dark and under control frequently misinterpret that frequency, which is pure and untraceable. It is the frequency of divine alignment, power, and freedom. Therefore, what they believed to be development or simply a new phase of your life turned out to be a complete disappearance. You stopped playing their game, so you became invisible to their tracking, not more visible. You ceased to send signals based on performance or pain. Rather, you act with integrity and truth, which are unpredictably, uncontrollably, and untraceable. You cut off their ability to follow you the instant you took back your authenticity. They are desperate to locate you, imitate you, or reintroduce you into the chaos because of this. However, you have surpassed their grid. You are now bright in your own light and dark on their maps. You're untraceable now because you finally become who you are. 11th, they are starving because your presence was their meal ticket. Their energy came from your presence prior to your transformation. They thrived on every hurt you carried, every difficult moment, and every time you tried to win their approval. Unbeknownst to them, you were a source of emotion that fueled their sense of authority and importance. Their strength was fueled by your suffering, and the cycle was maintained by your responses. The harsh reality is that many of the people who stayed in your life did so for the energy you gave them, regardless of the pain or conflict. However, everything changed when you disconnected. The system that depended on your wounds was no longer fed by you. The emotional energy they relied on was cut off by you. You were able to support yourself. Their power was starved by your calm, your boundaries, and your refusal to participate in outdated dramas. Envy, obsession, stalking, and those phony apologies that seem more like manipulation than regret are all examples of this. It's not love they're after. It's access. Access to the energy you once provided without realizing it. Now that you've taken yourself off the emotional menu, they're left hungry, confused, and desperate. They're trying to reconnect, but you've changed the rules. You're no longer their meal ticket. You're no longer available as a source of emotional fuel. Their obsession isn't affection. It's starvation masked in desperation. This is a brutal shift for them. When you were the source, they held power without accountability. Now that you're whole and self-powered, that control slips through their fingers. They lash out, act irrational, or retreat into bitterness because the energy they once had over you is gone. You didn't just grow, you severed their lifeline. That hunger they're experiencing isn't about you personally. It's about losing their constant supply. That's why they can't track you anymore. They're starving because you stopped being their meal ticket. Number 12. Your energy became undecodable because you learned to reprogram reality. You didn't just change on the surface. You rewired your entire system. The way you think, feel, and respond shifted so profoundly that the old scripts no longer apply. Where you once reacted automatically, now you pause, assess, and choose differently. You say no to things that used to chain you, and you disappear from spaces where you were once visible. This isn't random. It's a deliberate reprogramming of your internal operating system. They were used to running their manipulations like a predictable program, expecting the usual glitches: anger, fear, confusion, or neediness. But now your energy runs on an upgraded platform. The old viruses, lies, and emotional traps they set simply don't work anymore. Their spiritual malware, jealousy, control, fear, and sabotage crashes when it attempts to infect you because your defenses are no longer reactive, but proactive. To them, you appear like a bug in their matrix. You don't match their patterns. You don't react in ways they can comprehend or anticipate. They anticipate patterns and get riddles instead. Your silence, your limits, your unexpected disappearances, they can't decipher it. So they worry, try harder, or quit up. But to God and to your ultimate self, this is pure progress. You're not broken, you're enhanced. You're operating a version of yourself that's aligned with divine design, no longer exposed to obsolete codes of pain and control. You're consciously rewriting your narrative, your emotional reactions, and even your appearance in ways that safeguard your soul and magnify your power. This reprogramming is your ultimate liberation. It implies you are no longer a tool to be managed, but a force to be reckoned with. Your energy is a language only the evolved can speak, and the ones attempting to monitor you don't have the code to grasp it anymore. You're not lost. You're beyond their grasp. Number 13. They can't watch you because your achievement is a spiritual accusation. Every stride you take upward is more than simply progress. It's a verdict against those who fought to keep you down. Your accomplishment is like to a thundering gavel striking their conscience's courtroom. It's not adulation when they watch you shine. Rather, it's a sobering reminder that their efforts to undermine or quiet you were unsuccessful. Your light is unquestionably evidence that you are shielded by something that is far beyond of their grasp. They made an effort to bury you behind falsehoods, uncertainties, and unfulfilled promises. Here you are, however, ascending. Your development is a quiet but unavoidable spiritual condemnation that their harshness and power were unable to avert what was bound to happen. Every accomplishment is a chapter in a larger narrative in which you are the winner rather than the victim. It's prophetic affirmation, not simply personal achievement. Your experience demonstrates that heavenly protection is an active power acting on your behalf rather than only a wishful thinking. They are deeply shaken by that truth. They can no longer openly observe you, as it reveals their frailty and the pointlessness of their attempts to stop you. Observing your accomplishments is akin to admitting defeat. They would rather ignore you and act as if you don't exist than confront the fact that they were mistaken about you. Their dread is stoked by your progress, which serves as a mirror to their failure. But every stride forward is freedom for you. It's an affirmation that you are picked for a cause bigger than their comprehension, impenetrable and indestructible. Your achievement is a statement to everyone who has ever attempted to restrict you, not just to you. Always, divine protection prevails. The 14th point is that they are losing control of the story, not simply sight of you. They wanted to write your tale, not only observe you. They required control over the story, which is why their eyes were fixed on you, not because they cared. They turned your hardships into amusement, your triumphs into rumors, and your suffering into jokes. They created you as a character in their play for their own entertainment or criticism. However, you broke that script by refusing to appear in their version of your tale and by moving outside of their time frame. The whole game was turned by you. Your quiet is a disturbance, not an absence. It's a rejection of the role they have portrayed you in. Your metamorphosis is more than just personal development. It's the dismantling of the mythology they created around you and its exposure as false. They flourished on consistency, knowing when to push, when to make fun of, and when to gaslight. However, their map does not show your updated route. Your tale is being rewritten on a time frame that is inaccessible to them. Because you are not under their control, you are thus invisible to their tracking. Their tales become less compelling the more you are not there. Their story unravels without your enthusiasm to support their rumors and your responses to support their falsehoods. They are the ones left fumbling to develop a new screenplay to remain relevant. You are no longer the tale they tell. You're free, not lost or forgotten. Their grip on your past and now is broken by your change, which accomplishes more than simply help you go ahead. They are no longer able to trace you because of this. Their authority diminishes when they lose control of the story. In actuality, you become untouchable as soon as you embrace your genuine self and purpose and move into your authentic power. You soar beyond their grasp, not because you flee or hide, simply because you no longer function within the constrained parameters of their vision. Their efforts to monitor, manipulate, or forecast you are ineffective. Your development is an extreme act of defiance. They are left fumbling in the dark, trying desperately to catch up, but they are always one step behind because of the whole system reset. This is about a fundamental transformation that breaks every old link and dispels every darkness cast on your soul, not only about avoiding negativity or toxicity. You have recovered your narrative, rebuilt your tale, and reprogrammed your energy. By accomplishing this, you have turned into a live example of the strength of individual autonomy and divine harmony. You are really free now that you have risen above the game they attempted to play with you.